The cup of tea on the table was still steaming when Elena Maddox vanished from the town of Gallatin, Tennessee, population 16,274. On the night of the last day of July, 2004, the summer heat lingered over the quiet streets beside Stone Creek Lake. At 10:18 p.m., Elena's neighbor, Joanie Rivers, looked out her kitchen window and saw the 32-year-old teacher step out of the car with her husband, former police officer Royce Maddox. Elena was carrying her high heels in her hand, smiling faintly as they walked into the house after a late dinner party. The porch light spilled onto the driveway, catching the ivory fabric of her dress for a moment before the door closed behind them. What happened in the 4 hours that followed would haunt Gallatin for nearly 2 decades. Before we dive deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. The summer of 2004, Tennessee was sweltering in the thick characteristic heat of the American South. The town of Gallatin, on the edge of Sumner County, still moved at a slow, peaceful pace where people called each other by first names, and the police were seen as pillars of the community. It was a time when America was stepping into a brief period of calm after the upheavals of the early decade, when stories of serious crime rarely made it past the back pages of the local paper. In that setting, Royce Maddox, deputy sheriff of Sumner County, was a familiar face in Gallatin. Tall, calm, he often appeared at community events and was regarded as a model of seriousness and responsibility. People regularly saw him driving his patrol vehicle down Main Street, stopping to greet everyone with the demeanor of a trustworthy neighbor. His wife, Elena Maddox, 36 years old, was an administrative employee at St. Thomas Hospital in Nashville. Colleagues described her as sharp, gentle, always balancing work and family, spending weekends gardening and volunteering with her church group. They had been married for 8 years and lived in a 2-story suburban home surrounded by old oak trees and a small, meticulously trimmed garden. To their neighbors, they were a stable, respectable couple who rarely raised their voices and never showed any signs of discord. On the last night of July, the Maddoxes attended a party celebrating the anniversary of the police department at the Gallatin Community Center. The party ran late, and the last guest saw them leave in a somewhat tense atmosphere. One colleague later recalled that Elena had been quiet all evening, while Royce seemed tired and kept checking his watch. Around midnight, the next-door neighbor heard their car pull in, then a door slam and a few faint sounds from the backyard. The couple's voices started out normal, then grew louder, but no one paid much attention, assuming it was just a marital disagreement. After that, the house fell silent. The next morning, the sun rose early, light pouring through the second-floor windows, but Elena did not leave the house as usual. A coworker from the hospital called several times, no answer. Her silver Toyota Camry was no longer in the garage. By mid-morning, hospital administration reported that Elena had not shown up for work, had not called in sick, and was not responding to emails. Close friends tried to reach her and got nothing. At noon, Royce Maddox called the local police station, his voice hoarse, reporting that his wife had left the house the previous night and had not returned. The call was routed directly to the Sumner County 911 Dispatch Center, where the operator logged the time, address, and the fact that the caller was the current deputy sheriff. The system automatically classified the call as a suspicious missing person, and the nearest patrol unit was dispatched to the Maddox home on Cedar Hill Drive. When the patrol car arrived, the clock read just before 1 p.m. The 2-story house stood quiet under the harsh midday sun. Curtains still drawn, Royce's patrol vehicle parked in the driveway. Royce was waiting on the porch in a wrinkled shirt, his face tired and tense but controlled. The 2 officers conducted a walk-around, front door locked, windows latched from the inside, no signs of forced entry. Inside, everything was tidy, the living room looked freshly cleaned. A faint smell of cleaning solution hung in the air, prompting one officer to note that the scene was unusually clean for a normal residence. Royce explained what happened. The night before, after the party, he and Elena had a minor argument. She was upset, grabbed her car keys and left to drive around and clear her head. He said he waited up until morning, thinking she would return, but when she didn't answer her phone, and the car was gone from the garage, he grew worried. Royce stressed that Elena had never stayed out overnight without telling him, and insisted there had been no serious conflict between them. The officers asked about what she was wearing, what she took with her, and places she might go. Royce answered clearly, and even provided her work schedule for the week. One officer wrote in the report, "Reporting party cooperative, calm, articulate." After completing the check, the patrol unit photographed the exterior of the house, documented the doors and windows, the backyard, and the surrounding area. Nothing unusual, no strange objects, no signs of movement. The scene report concluded briefly, "Doors locked. No signs of break-in or struggle." All information was forwarded to headquarters by the end of the shift, with an additional note that since the reporting party was law enforcement, he might handle emotional responses better than the average citizen. That same afternoon, an official missing person file was opened under case number M04177, classified as missing person, suspicious circumstances. Elena Maddox's personal details were entered into state and federal databases. Her physical description, license plate, and driver's license number were immediately uploaded to the NCIC system. The patrol report, complete with photos and Royce's initial statement, was sent to the Sumner County Criminal Investigation Division for evaluation and next steps. As the patrol car pulled away from the quiet street, Royce Maddox's house returned to silence. At headquarters, the newly opened file sat on the duty desk, marking the official start of a disappearance that no one yet knew would become one of the longest-running cases in the county. The next morning, after file M04177 was transferred to the forensic unit under standard procedure for suspicious disappearances, a search warrant for the scene was signed at 8:15 a.m. A three-person forensic team arrived at Royce Maddox's house on Cedar Hill Drive. Royce was already there, let them in, and gave permission for the examination. The two-story house was quiet, curtains still closed, faint light filtering through the gaps, and casting a pale gray tone over the living room. The team leader ordered panoramic photos before anything was touched. Cameras captured every angle: entryway, staircase, kitchen, back door, porch, and the lawn outside. Everything was immaculate, items arranged so precisely that almost nothing appeared out of place. In the kitchen, one technician noted that the tile floor seemed damper than normal, despite the air conditioning running constantly. She bent down, the light reflected off the glossy surface, revealing perfectly uniform arc-shaped white marks. Under ultraviolet light, no traces of blood or organic material appeared, only a faint glow from cleaning solution. A mild chemical smell still lingered, enough for the team to conclude the floor had been wiped within the past 24 hours. At the back door, the hinges showed fine dust and smudged fingerprints that couldn't be lifted, normal household marks. On the back porch, they noted a few dried mud streaks mixed with sand, possibly tracked in from the yard. The mud was collected separately with gloves and test tubes, sealed according to protocol, and labeled 04177C1. Throughout the process, Royce stood in the living room, answering questions when asked, but never leaving his spot, simply watching in silence. One technician asked to check the kitchen trash. Inside was a plastic bag containing used paper towels and an empty bottle of cleaning solution. Everything was photographed, sealed, and labeled 04177C2. No suspicious items, no blood, hair, or unusual physical evidence were found. The team leader noted, "Scene clean, signs of recent cleaning." The living room and hallway showed no drag marks or impact damage. The back porch glass was intact, the door bolted from the inside. All scene photos, 62 frames, were saved with automatic timestamps. When finished, the team returned to the kitchen, took surface swabs with specialized cotton tips, sealed them as 04177C3, and attached them to the evidence log. The mud, paper towels, and cleaning solution samples were stored in sealed containers for transport to the Nashville lab. Before leaving, the team leader read the full evidence list aloud and asked Royce to sign that he had witnessed the collection. He signed without comment, only saying he wanted to cooperate fully to find his wife. A preliminary report was drafted on site, stating clearly, "No blood detected, no signs of struggle, scene likely cleaned." At 10:30 a.m., the forensic van left Cedar Hill, carrying all sealed evidence. The report was delivered to headquarters that same day, marking the first step in gathering physical evidence in the Elena Maddox disappearance. That same afternoon, once the forensic team finished collecting samples and left the scene, the Sumner County Sheriff's Office began implementing a search plan beyond the house. An order was signed at a 2 p.m. emergency meeting directing a search within a 10-mile radius of Cedar Hill Drive. The search team consisted of 14 deputies, 2 K-9 units, and local volunteer rescue groups. The first focus was the trail system leading to the forest north of Gallatin, where residents often walked or jogged in the mornings. The weather was stifling, temperatures over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, making the work grueling. Officers moved in lines, marking sections with orange spray paint, combing bushes and creek banks, but found no trace of the missing woman. Another team was sent to the shores of Old Hickory Lake, covering hundreds of yards of shoreline and narrow fishing paths. They used motorboats to scan the western bank, where trails sloped down to the water, and binoculars to check dense reed areas. The dogs reacted mildly near an old wooden bridge, but expanding the search revealed no distinctive scent or signs. By late afternoon, the initial sweep yielded nothing significant. The next morning, the rescue team shifted to the Stone Creek Forest, an area bordering the lake about 8 miles from the Maddox home. This was semi-flooded land, with thick brush and old trails where people had gone missing before. 4 teams were assigned grid searches using topographic maps and handheld GPS units. Guides logged every stop, took photos, and numbered locations. After 6 hours, the entire area was covered with no signs of a vehicle or person. One officer noted the soil was undisturbed. No tire tracks or buried objects. Results were compiled and sent to headquarters, confirming no physical evidence found. Meanwhile, Royce Maddox volunteered for the second day's search. He showed up that morning in field clothes and joined the unit commander. Several team members noted he worked quietly, barely speaking, just observing and holding the map. He searched nearby areas, picked up every piece of trash to inspect, then silently moved on. Whenever someone found something unusual, he would approach, bend down, nod, and walk away. The internal end-of-day report noted, victim's family member participated cooperatively, remained calm, no strong emotional displays. GPS data from all teams was uploaded and merged into a master map, showing coverage of most of eastern Gallatin. However, gaps remained around Old Hickory Lake, where terrain was complex and deep mud made access difficult. To ensure nothing was missed, investigators requested sonar equipment for the lake bottom, but the county lacked the resources. A temporary report was sent to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation requesting technical and manpower support. By day's end, a formal cooperation order was signed, transferring all map data and samples to the TBI system. Local search teams stood down pending specialized equipment. In the internal log, the lead inspector wrote, "After 2 days of 10-mile radius searches, no positive results. Natural area too vast, weather conditions unfavorable. Recommend state-level coordination." As night fell, Stone Creek Forest grew quiet again. The ribbons marking search boundaries still hung in the breeze, catching the headlights of police vehicles parked at the entrance. In the final daily report, one detail was bolded. No results, but victims' presence in the lake area cannot be ruled out. On the afternoon of the 3rd day of the search operation, a volunteer sweeping the edge of Stone Creek Forest radioed headquarters that he had spotted a silver car parked about 200 meters off the main trail. The area was south of the lake where trees were dense and traffic rare. When the rapid response team arrived, they found a 2002 Toyota Camry registered to Elena Maddox. The car sat at an angle on dry ground, nose pointed toward the woods, covered in a thin layer of dust and fallen leaves, suggesting it had been there at least 1 or 2 days. Doors locked, no pry marks, windows intact. Using a spare key provided by headquarters, officers opened the door, and found the ignition key still inserted. No purse, phone, or personal items inside. The driver's seat was pulled close to the wheel, rearview mirror adjusted low, details matching Elena's known habits. The trunk was empty, floor mats clean. No mud or liquid stains. The scene report noted, no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no scratches. One technician examined door edges and sills, only uniform dry dust, undisturbed. In the glove box were a few gas receipts from the previous week, and a St. Thomas Hospital ID badge. Notably absent was Elena's cell phone, which her husband said she always carried. Police photographed the overall scene, marked the car's position, orientation, and distance from the trail. While checking the surroundings, they found a second, fainter set of tire tracks crossing the exit path, but not clear enough to identify the vehicle. A 30-meter radius around the scene was cordoned with police tape, and forensics was called to collect trace evidence. Royce Maddox was notified immediately after the plate was confirmed. He arrived at the field command post, but was not allowed near the scene. The internal note recorded him as silent, no reaction upon learning the car had been found. While forensics worked, police closed the Stone Creek Trail to the public. They measured distances from the car to the main road, created a GPS coordinate map, and transmitted data back to Gallatin headquarters. After photography was complete, the car was loaded onto a flatbed tow truck and fully covered with a tarp to prevent media exposure. Police escorted the vehicle out of the forest at 7:20 p.m., heading straight to the Nashville Forensic Center, nearly 40 miles away. The entire transport was recorded by dashcam to maintain chain of custody. The report sent to the Sumner County Investigation Office that evening stated clearly, victim's vehicle recovered intact, doors locked, key in ignition, no signs of violence or collision, no personal items inside. Vehicle located off regular traffic areas, no footprints nearby. Cause for abandonment undetermined. An overhead photo and location map were attached to the file. Coordinates were forwarded to TBI for movement pattern analysis. In the shift log, the lead inspector's final line read, "First major evidence in the disappearance secured safely. Condition of vehicle does not suggest emergency behavior, indicates driver stopped intentionally." The next morning, Elena Maddox's Toyota Camry was brought into the vehicle examination bay at the Nashville Forensic Center. The car had been sealed overnight in a climate-controlled storage area to preserve the chain of evidence. At 8:30 a.m., a 3-member forensic team broke the seals and documented the initial condition. The dust layer on the exterior was thick, but even no sliding or scrape marks, meaning no collisions. They examined the outside, photographing every side in detail, door handles, mirrors, wheel wells, badges, license plate. Underneath, flashlight beams revealed dark mud caked tightly to the undercarriage metal. Mud samples were scraped into test tubes, labeled 04177V1, then quickly compared to stored geological samples from the Stone Creek area in the Tennessee State Database. Preliminary results matched almost perfectly in mineral composition, confirming the mud came from the southern lake shore, where limestone and fine clay were prevalent. Visual inspection showed dried mud stuck to the brake system and rear axle, proving the car had traveled through wet ground shortly before stopping. Inside, the cabin remained exactly as discovered, driver's seat pushed forward, passenger seat upright, no physical signs of struggle or impact. Leather seats intact, light dust cover, no stains. An ultraviolet sweep of the interior revealed no fluorescence typical of blood or organic fluids. Steering wheel, gear shift and door handles yielded only a few clear fingerprints, later matched to Royce Maddox, with the rest smudged and unusable. Floor mats were lifted. The underside was dry. No fresh mud seepage. In the glove box, the team recovered 3 gas receipts from a station near downtown Gallatin, a St. Thomas Hospital employee badge, and an internal shift schedule with Elena's handwriting. Nothing torn, folded, or displaced. The trunk liner was flat, no dents, no odors, no liquid residue. Tire pressure sensors showed slight differences between front and rear, typical for travel on unpaved trails. The right rear tire had more mud than the others, consistent with the turn from the main road into the Stone Creek Forest area. The examination team noted this detail because it confirmed the route taken before stopping. Headlights and taillights functioned normally, no burned-out bulbs, indicating the car was shut off properly, not abruptly. The battery still held a weak charge. The dashboard clock was 3 hours off, likely from power interruption when the engine was turned off. The driver's side window had a faint arm print, but it was unclear whether it was recent or old. All mud, fiber, fingerprint, and small item samples were packaged in specialized evidence bags with full labeling and collection times. Before concluding the examination, the team leader reviewed all images and confirmed no blood, no evidence of struggle or dragging of a heavy object. The preliminary report, 27 pages, was completed by the end of the day, concluding 2002 Toyota Camry, recovered intact, no signs of violence or collision. Dried mud on undercarriage matches Stone Creek Lake geological profile, indicating the vehicle traveled through the area shortly before stopping. Tire pressure confirms travel on unpaved trails southeast of Gallatin. The examination file was sealed with samples and transferred directly to the Sumner County CID that same evening for the next phase of investigation. The morning after, the Criminal Investigation Division received the complete vehicle forensic report along with crime scene photos and geological data. Immediately upon receipt, CID held an internal meeting to reconstruct the timeline, temporarily referred to as the events of the night of July 31st. Based on Royce Maddox's statement, the argument between the couple took place after they returned from the party around nearly 11 p.m. Royce stated that Elena left the house around midnight, driving off alone, and that he stayed home until the following morning, when he discovered she had not returned. The official missing person report time was established as 12:16 p.m. the next day via the 911 call log. Thus, according to Royce, there was a gap of more than 12 hours between when Elena supposedly left the house and when he reported her missing. CID cross-referenced this statement with field data from patrol units and neighbor statements. Among them, one witness living 2 houses away from the Maddox residence reported hearing a vehicle engine start in the early morning hours at the time she woke up for her night shift job. She specifically stated she heard the engine turn over and then rev, the sound lasting a few seconds before going silent. Another witness at the end of the street confirmed seeing vehicle headlights shine onto the main road at roughly the same time, sometime after 3 a.m. All of these statements were recorded and attached to case file M0-4177. CID entered the data into the timeline, which included 11 p.m. Couple returns home. 3 a.m. Neighbors hear vehicle 12:16 p.m. Missing person report filed. The simulated diagram clearly showed the significant discrepancy between Royce's statement and the external timestamps. To verify, investigators checked traffic camera systems around the neighborhood but found no data, as the area in 2004 had no automated surveillance system. Gas stations along the route from Cedar Hill to Stone Creek Forest also retained no footage, only paper receipts without detailed timestamps. Authorities attempted to locate Elena's cell phone signal, but telecom services at the time retained data only briefly, and no signal could be retrieved. Thus, the entire chain of movement from the house to the discovery of the vehicle relied entirely on estimates. CID compiled these timestamps into the initial analysis report, highlighting a gap of more than 8 hours long between when neighbors heard the vehicle and when the report was made. One investigator raised the question of why the husband, a trained law enforcement officer, did not report sooner if his wife had left at night without her phone or purse. When re-interviewed, Royce stated he assumed she just wanted to avoid the argument and did not want to be followed. However, this explanation did not address why he made no attempt to contact her friends or colleagues throughout the morning. CID continued interviewing additional neighbors, most of whom confirmed they saw no one entering or leaving the Maddox house between midnight and dawn. One neighbor directly across the street reported seeing the kitchen light on around nearly 4 a.m., then off again, but was unsure if anyone was inside. Police noted timeline mismatch. Possible someone else operated the vehicle or moved inside the house after Elena's departure. The technical analysis team re-examined the clock in the Camry and discovered it was running 3 hours behind actual time. Based on the vehicle's automatic power cutoff feature, they estimated the engine was turned off around 3:10 a.m., consistent with the time neighbors heard the engine start. The CID internal report concluded Royce Maddox's statement regarding the time his wife left the house does not match actual events. Available data indicates the vehicle left the neighborhood around 3 a.m., while the reporting party claims he was unaware this occurred. This document was forwarded to County Command the same day and filed with the main case file, marking the first time a significant discrepancy appeared between the statement and physical evidence. After the timeline analysis report was submitted, the CID commander ordered an expanded crime scene search focusing on areas of Royce Maddox's house that had not been thoroughly examined. Pursuant to investigative authority and with approval from the county prosecutor's office, an additional search warrant was signed on the morning of August 5, authorizing a full search of the garage, storage areas, and backyard. That same day, the forensic technical team returned to Cedar Hill and coordinated with the lead investigator. Royce was present at the residence, was informed of the procedure, and signed the consent form. The garage was attached to the ground floor, with metal-clad walls, a concrete floor, and 2 exits, one to the backyard and one into the kitchen. Inside, it was dimly lit with a mixed smell of motor oil and damp fabric. The team raised the roll-up door, turned on floodlights, and began examining each section. Most items were neatly organized, tools hung on the wall, bicycles, old paint cans, and cardboard boxes labeled winter gear. In the western corner, on a metal shelf, lay a thin gray blanket folded unevenly with damp patches. When pulled down for inspection, a faint bleach-like odor was detected. A technician wearing gloves unfolded the blanket and discovered several long brown hairs stuck to the fabric. She removed them with tweezers, placed them on a glass slide for preservation, and labeled it 04177G1. A small damp corner of the fabric was cut for chemical testing, which confirmed ordinary moisture rather than blood. The entire blanket was rolled up, placed in an evidence bag, and coded 04177G2. Additionally, the team photographed the entire area, measured distances from the shelf to the garage door, and noted several faint parallel skid marks on the floor, as if from a heavy object being dragged. Though the timing could not be determined. Royce, standing near the door, said only that it was an old dog blanket, that he had washed it and put it there to dry, because that spot stays damp. The investigators recorded the explanation, but seized all items anyway. In a nearby trash can, they found 2 cleaning rags with dark stains, which were sealed separately. Upon further inspection, one technician noted the garage floor was unusually clean, showing only metal dust and a little cement powder. The entire area was scanned with ultraviolet light, with no unusual fluorescence. Evidence collection lasted more than 2 hours, after which all items were loaded into the technical van and transported to the Nashville lab. The hair samples were prioritized and sent to the DNA unit with a rush request for identification. 2 days later, preliminary results came back. The hairs had intact cuticles, measured 19.4 centimeters, light brown color, consistent with Elena Maddox's physical description. However, due to 2004 technological limitations, DNA testing could only confirm gender, not individualize. The official report stated, DNA confirms female, cannot exclude the missing person, additional reference sample required for comparison. The fabric and rags were placed in cold storage for future chemical analysis. CID added these results to file M04177. marking the first physical evidence recovered from inside the house related to the disappearance. The end-of-day summary report concluded, no signs of violence observed, however, damp blanket and unidentified female hairs recovered. DNA result indicates gender only. Recommend continued testing when technology permits. The report was signed by the lead investigator and filed with the documents regarding evidence collected during the search of Royce Maddox's garage. When the hair examination report reached the CID office, the Sumner County Investigative Commander decided to forward the file to the FBI Nashville Behavioral Analysis Unit for a psychological evaluation of the reporting party. Since the physical evidence gathered was insufficient to charge but contained multiple inconsistencies, the formal request was sent on August 9, 2004, accompanied by all statements, scene reports, photographs of the house and vehicle, and copies of the 911 calls. 3 days later, a behavioral team consisting of 2 analysts and 1 forensic psychology consultant arrived at the CID office for discussions. They began by reviewing in detail how Royce Maddox described the incident across his various statements. The initial statement, taken the day he reported her missing, was clear, chronologically coherent, with no repetition or contradiction. In the second statement, 4 days later, the wording remained stable, delivered slowly, with only minor changes in emotional framing, for example, shifting from small argument to discussion about work. The specialists assessed this as reflecting a high degree of linguistic control and psychological reflex. Royce's personnel file was obtained from County HR 18 years of service, previously in internal security. No disciplinary record. Periodic psychological evaluations placed him as introverted, highly disciplined, and low in outward emotional expression. The team concluded these traits could cause outsiders to perceive abnormally calm behavior during a crisis. For additional data, the FBI interviewed close colleagues in Royce's unit. They uniformly described him as reserved, accustomed to working alone, and sometimes rigid in communication. One colleague recalled that after the disappearance became known, Royce still came to work, sat at his desk writing reports, and completing paperwork without taking leave. When asked how he felt, he replied only, "I still have to work." The specialists noted this as evidence of extreme emotional control, common in highly disciplined individuals, but also a potential mechanism for masking stress. In the closing meeting, the lead analyst stated, "Subject is highly cooperative yet demonstrates overly stable control of speech and behavior relative to the context of a missing spouse, likely employing professional skills to maintain a calm appearance." The report highlighted 3 main points. 1. Royce Maddox shows no signs of panic or loss of control. 2. His responses are consistent across all sessions, indicating well-practiced psychological reflexes. 3. No evidence yet confirms deception. From these observations, the team recommended long-term surveillance to monitor psychological changes over time. The FBI advised CID not to pursue charges due to insufficient legal grounds and instead to continue gathering indirect information, travel patterns, daily routines, social contacts. One section of the report also noted the subject may be experiencing mild emotional disturbance, but external manifestation is suppressed by a strong controlling personality structure. That same day, the 13-page evaluation was signed and returned to CID with the formal recommendation: conduct periodic behavioral monitoring for 6 months, noting any significant changes in emotion, speech, or social relationships. Insufficient grounds at this time for prosecution or detention. The file was placed in M0-4177 under Behavioral Review, Federal Assistance, stamped complete on August 13, 2004. With this evaluation, the case was temporarily shifted to a monitoring and information gathering phase, pending new physical evidence to determine a clearer investigative direction. After the FBI behavioral report was filed, CID Sumner County decided to take the final step available under the current investigation: an expanded underwater search around Old Hickory Lake and the Stone Creek Forest area where the Toyota Camry was found. The reason was that geological analysis of mud on the vehicle undercarriage perfectly matched this location, suggesting the victim had been present there. The deployment order was signed August 20th, 2004, mobilizing the Tennessee State Rescue Team in coordination with the Water Patrol Unit. A side-scan sonar unit was brought in from Nashville, a modified civilian device capable of detecting medium-sized objects within a 100-meter radius. The search area was divided into 3 zones: the South Shore, where the car was recovered, the Central Lake Bed, and the deep western shoreline. On the first day, 2 motorized boats carrying the sonar equipment moved slowly along the shore. Each scan pass took more than 2 hours. The monitor displayed only flat lake-bottom terrain, a few rocks, and scattered debris. No signal suggesting a body or large object. Technicians marked coordinates of 3 points with unusual acoustic returns, but when divers investigated, they found only rotten logs and old tires. On the second day, the search moved to deeper water with similarly negative results. Dive teams rotated from morning to evening, surfacing only small items such as drink cans, a torn life vest, and plastic fragments, nothing related to the disappearance. The end-of-day report read, "No body recovered, no additional evidence." After 3 consecutive days, more than 600 scans were completed, and all data stored in the CID system for future reference. Police also re-examined the muddy banks along Stone Creek, but thick mud and high temperatures made trace detection impractical. Ultimately, the operation commander terminated the search on August 25th, concluding the likelihood of finding new evidence was very low. A 22-page summary report was prepared confirming the entire lake area had been surveyed with no evidence of a body or items related to the victim. In an early September internal meeting, CID agreed there was no further basis for field investigation. The hair samples, mud samples, sonar data, neighbor statements, and behavioral evaluation were compiled into the central file. The chief inspector signed the interim closure report, stating clearly, "At this time there is insufficient evidence to establish criminal conduct. The Elena Maddox case remains classified as missing person, cause unknown. Recommend closing the file, pending future information." By the end of 2004, all documents were duplicated and moved to the Nashville archive labeled M0-4177, section Cold Hold, pending reactivation. In the Sumner County Master Log, the final entry for the case was a single brief line: "No result, undetermined." After the underwater search summary report was approved and signed in late September 2004, the Elena Maddox disappearance file was officially changed from active investigation to archived pending reactivation. On October 4th, the case code M0-4177 was entered into the central management system of the Nashville Cold Case Division, the unit responsible for preserving and categorizing unsolved cases. 2 sealed evidence boxes were transported by secure vehicle from the Sumner County office to the state secure evidence vault located at the Tennessee Investigative Complex. The entire handover process was documented in a 3-party receipt among CID, the Forensic Lab, and the Cold Case Division. Box 1 contained the physical evidence, hair sample 0-4-177G1, garage blanket 0-4-177G2, undercarriage mud sample 0-4-177V1, plus the 2 stained cleaning rags and a vial of cleaning solution. Everything was sealed in moisture-proof containers with lead seals and QR-coded labels. Box 2 held photographic and electronic records, 62 photos of the Maddox house scene, 47 photos of the vehicle recovery site, 21 photos of Stone Creek Forest, plus 1 VHS tape of backyard security footage provided by Royce. Also included were copies of the 911 recording, neighbor interview transcripts, and all technical reports from July through September. After verification, Cold Case Division staff confirmed seals intact and signatures complete, then logged the items to shelf location T12. A digital copy of the entire file was stored on the secure internal server for future retrieval if reactivation was requested. The accompanying administrative report stated, "No new investigative activity. File status changed to cold hold. Closed pending new data or reactivation request." From late 2004 through 2006, no unit requested access or additions to this file. Physical evidence was inventoried every 6 months and remained intact in climate-controlled storage. Staff who later worked in the vault recalled that M04-177 was unremarkable, just one of hundreds of unsolved disappearances stored during that period. The 2007 Cold Case Division statistical report noted, "Maddox case inactive status, no indication for review." Thus, after nearly half a year of investigation and 3 months of searching, all that remained of the case was a few carefully sealed evidence packets, resting quietly in the Nashville metal vault, beneath rows of fluorescent lights and hundreds of other boxes, marking the moment Elena Maddox's disappearance officially fell silent. 18 years passed since file M04-177 was placed in storage. In that long interval, Nashville changed, investigative technology changed, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation launched a comprehensive modernization program for old case files. In early 2022, following a series of interagency meetings, the TBI director signed an order establishing a dedicated unit called the Cold Case Re-Review Task Force under the State Investigative Office, tasked with re-examining all unsolved disappearances and homicides from 1980 to 2015. The team was divided into 3 independent groups, each handling a geographic region, using next-generation DNA, image restoration, and digital tracing to reassess files showing inconsistencies or retaining usable stored evidence. In the very first quarter, the Central Archive was automatically scanned to identify cases meeting reactivation criteria. Selection factors included intact sealed biological samples, physical evidence not yet tested with modern methods, or living key witnesses. Out of more than 400 files flagged by the system, 50 were marked high priority based on completeness of records and recovery potential. One of them was the disappearance of Elena Maddox, case code M04-177, stored at Nashville Cold Case Division Shelf T12. The automated classification noted the file contained partially unsequenced DNA samples, analog images not yet digitized, and surviving primary witness. These conditions fully satisfied the program criteria. In February 2022, during the task force's 3rd meeting, the Maddox name was listed 27th among cases selected for reactivation. On March 15, an order was issued requiring the Cold Case Division to transfer all documents, evidence, and original records to the Special Investigative Team. Archive staff located Shelf T12, verified seals intact, and signed the transfer receipt. The 2 evidence boxes and document binder were transported to the TBI Nashville Investigative Center in a secure vehicle with armed escort. At 10:45 a.m., code M04-177 was officially reactivated in the system. The software noted, "Status reopened. Re-Review Task Force 2022." Accompanying materials included copies of scene photos, the undigitized VHS tape, hair samples, mud samples, fabric samples, and all 2004 technical reports. By end of day, the forensic team completed preliminary evidence sorting and created a list of items eligible for retesting with modern full genome DNA technology. The internal memo stated, "Maddox file fully meets criteria. Prioritize reanalysis of hair samples and VHS image recovery." Also that same week, the case file was assigned to Investigation Team Number 2, and Inspector Claire Holbrook, who was responsible for the Central Tennessee region, took over the task of fully re-examining the entire matter. She was the youngest investigator on the Cold Case Re-Review Task Force and had prior experience in re-examination projects using modern DNA technology. On the morning of March 18, 2022, Claire signed the receipt document for the Maddox file and began the review process. 2 evidence boxes were placed on the examination table in the sealed records room, where white light poured down from the fluorescent fixtures built into the work surfaces. She opened each box, checked the seals, and cross-referenced the signatures from 2004. Everything remained intact. The lead adhesive strips were uncracked, and the serial numbers matched the original inventory. In the first evidence box, Claire found the bags containing hair samples, mud, fabric, and the blanket. Each bag was clearly labeled with the collection date, location, and collector. Alongside them were copies of the 2004 forensic report from the Nashville Criminalistics Laboratory, in which the partial DNA test had only been able to determine female gender. Claire read the conclusion carefully. Insufficient data for comparison. Technology at the time was unable to retrieve the full genetic sequence. That note made her pause longer. She knew that since 2018, the State Central Laboratory had been using whole genome sequencing (WGS) technology capable of analyzing samples containing only a few nanograms of DNA. If the hair collected in 2004 still retained its cuticle structure as described in the old report, the chances of recovering a complete genetic profile were very high. Claire continued reading the case file. She reorganized the entire sequence chronologically: missing person report, scene sample collection, vehicle recovery, forensic examinations, Stone Creek Lake mud results, FBI behavioral assessment, and finally the decision to shelve the case. Every report was numbered and stored in a yellowed hard folder. At the back of the file was a clipped Polaroid photograph of the gray blanket recovered from the garage, labeled underneath G2, sample of fabric, wet spot. Everything was clean, dry, and showed no signs of decomposition. Claire wrote 3 items in her notebook to follow up on: 1. Condition of hair sample 04177 G1. 2. Possibility of recovering data from the still undigitized VHS tape. 3. Comparison of DNA data with the updated TCODIS database. That afternoon, she called the TBI DNA laboratory in Knox County to confirm the procedure for submitting old samples. They replied that reanalysis could be completed within 2 weeks of receipt if the sample quality was good. Claire immediately drafted an 8-page re-examination request, signed it, and sent it to the task force director for approval. In the request, she clearly stated the rationale: the hair sample collected from the 2004 garage scene has high scientific value. The previous result only determined gender and lacked a full genetic sequence. Current whole genome DNA technology allows detailed data retrieval and precise individual matching. The proposal also listed the objectives: confirm the identity of the missing victim, determine sample origin, and compare against the national database. At the same time, Claire reviewed the image data set and noticed the backyard VHS tape was still in analog magnetic form and had not been digitized. She noted, prioritize after completion of biological testing. On March 21st, the re-examination request was approved. Hair sample 04177 G1 was resealed and prepared for transfer to the state DNA laboratory. Claire signed the handover document, attaching the full sequencing request and instructions to compare against any available family reference samples. Before closing the file, she wrote in the tracking log, evidence condition good, suitable for new technology analysis. Full DNA sequencing results will determine next investigative direction. With those words, the Maddox case officially entered the re-examination phase 18 years after the file had originally been closed. 3 days after the re-examination was approved, hair sample 04177 G1 was transported by specialized vehicle from the TBI Nashville Evidence Vault to the State Central DNA Laboratory in Knox County. The handover took place on the morning of March 24, 2022, with representatives of the Cold Case Re-Review Task Force and 2 forensic biology technicians present. The sample remained sealed in a sterile preservation tube, still bearing the original 2004 labels and signatures. The lab recorded stable storage temperature. The hair was 19.4 centimeters long, with the root sheath intact. Before sequencing, technicians took microscopic photographs confirming no degradation. The testing process was divided into 3 stages: DNA extraction, whole genome amplification and sequencing, and comparison with the National CODIS database. After 36 hours of automated processing, the sequencer completed 98% of the genetic map. Results showed the hair sample carried female-specific markers, European, North American ancestry cluster, high homogeneity, and no contamination. As soon as the raw data was available, technicians entered it into CODIS for comparison against family reference samples submitted in 2004. Among them was a blood reference from Mrs. Eleanor White, Elena's biological mother. The match level displayed was 99.998%, sufficient under forensic standards to establish direct parent-child relationship. The report concluded hair sample 04177G1 matches DNA of reference sample from Eleanor White. Biological origin confirmed as her daughter. The data was entered into the TBI archive and printed in 3 copies. The laboratory sent preliminary results notification to the Cold Case Task Force office on the morning of March 29. Upon receiving the email, Inspector Claire Holbrook went directly to the lab to view the printed results. On screen, the CODIS identifier string clearly confirmed an absolute match. With her years of investigative experience, she understood this result did more than identify the hair's owner. It proved the victim had been inside the Maddox residence at the time the sample was collected, meaning Elena was present there on the night she disappeared. The official forensic report was issued that same evening, 12 pages signed by the DNA lab director and 2 independent examiners. The conclusion stated, biological evidence confirms victim Elena Maddox was present at the sample collection scene, forensic reliability meets federal standards. It added the recommendation that these results could serve as scientific basis to establish the victim's presence at the location in question, though the exact moment the hair was shed could not be determined. That same night, Claire prepared a summary for the task force director stating, full genome DNA sequencing confirms hair recovered from Royce Maddox's garage matches the victim's mother's DNA, 100%. Confirms Elena Maddox was present at the scene during or prior to the night of disappearance. The report was marked high priority and simultaneously forwarded to the Sumner County Prosecutor's Office for entry into the evidence system. At the bottom of the page, Claire wrote one short line in her personal log, 18 years, and finally the hair has spoken. On March 30, 2022, file M04177 status was updated to evidence reactivated, biological confirmation, clearing the way for the next investigative phase. Immediately after the DNA results were confirmed, Inspector Claire Holbrook moved to the second item in her Maddox file review plan, recovering video from the VHS tape recorded in the backyard of the Cedar Hill Road house. The tape had been sealed in a plastic case since 2004, labeled Camera 2, Backyard, July 2004. Preservation condition was good. The tape surface had only a thin layer of dust. On the morning of April 1, 2022, Claire took the evidence to the TBI Digital Image Analysis Center in Nashville, which is equipped with analog to digital conversion systems using low-speed scanners to minimize wear. Digitization began at 9:15 a.m. The technician opened the cassette, checked elasticity was normal with no sticking or tears. The analog signal was fed into the converter and saved directly in raw digital format. When the first file finished, the picture was foggy, heavy grain, shaking frames, and intermittent signal loss. According to the timestamp, the recording ran from 10:30 p.m. on July 31 to 5 a.m. the following morning. Precisely the window identified as the night of disappearance. In the first half, the backyard was quiet. Dark yard, dim porch light, no movement. But around 3 a.m., heavy interference appeared, followed by a flash of light in the lower left corner of the frame, the garage area. Recognizing the segment's value, the technician applied AI frame sync restoration software, which uses machine learning to reconstruct old tape footage. Reconstruction took nearly 2 hours and produced significantly clearer frames. When played in slow motion, Claire and the technicians observed that between 3:04 a.m. and 3:08 a.m., a human figure appeared at the edge of the porch, tall, wearing a light-colored top. The figure opened the back door and walked quickly toward the garage, carrying a long object that reflected the porch light, possibly a blanket or something wrapped inside. As the person crossed the lit area, the frame was clear enough to discern a heavy gait and slightly stooped posture, consistent with a height of approximately 6'1". This description was entered into the record. Adult male figure, tall and large, moving from back door toward garage, carrying long object, approx. 3:05 seconds later, the garage door opened slightly, weak light spilled out, then faded. For the remainder of the tape, no one returned. Only the dark yard and flickering porch light remained until the camera lost signal at 3:15 a.m. The team performed further enhancement using deep light brightness amplification software. Results confirmed the carried object was 1.4 meters long, soft, with both ends hanging down. Color could not be determined, but tone was light gray, very similar to the blanket recovered from the garage. When zoomed, frame 5129 showed a reflection from the moving person's wrist, possibly a metal watch. CID cross-checked against 2004 personnel photos of Royce Maddox, which showed him wearing a silver steel watch on his left wrist, matching the reflection location. However, due to low resolution, the finding was recorded only as consistent with description, identity not confirmed. After restoration was complete, the entire video was saved as master and duplicate files, along with a 14-page technical report. Claire personally reviewed it from beginning to end, pausing at the 3:05 a.m. frame of the man opening the back door. She noted, "Only human figure visible during the victim's disappearance window, moving toward garage carrying large object." On April 4th, the video copy was sealed as visual evidence under Code 04177 VHS 2D and entered into the TBI system. The final record stated, "Restored backyard camera footage shows individual moving on Maddox property around 3 a.m. on the 31st of July 2004, carrying large object toward garage. No return movement observed." For the first time in nearly 2 decades, file M04177 contained direct visual evidence of activity on the night Elena Maddox disappeared. Once VHS image recovery was complete and visual evidence of activity at the Maddox residence on the night of disappearance was obtained, the Cold Case Re-Review Task Force decided to expand the investigation back to Stone Creek Lake, where the Toyota Camry had been found in 2004. On April 8, 2022, at Inspector Claire Holbrook's recommendation, TBI approved deployment of latest generation sonar drones for a lakebed survey. Equipment was mobilized from the State Underwater Search Unit, 2 remote-operated drones, and 1 floating data analysis station. The survey area was defined based on 2004 geological data, focusing on the southern shoreline strip with deep mud and gentle slope, approximately 400 meters from the vehicle recovery site. On the morning of April 10, the technical team began operations at 6 a.m. The water was calm and thick fog lingered. The first drone was deployed and followed a spiral search pattern, while continuously scanning at 1200 kHz. The control station monitor displayed a detailed lakebed map with bright reflective bands and voids. For the first nearly 3 hours, nothing unusual appeared beyond rocks and fallen trees. At 9:47 a.m., the second drone detected an anomaly, a metallic object roughly 30 centimeters, buried more than 3 meters deep in mud, producing strong acoustic return with near rectangular shape and sharp edges. The signal was verified 3 consecutive times and remained stable. GPS coordinates were marked and transmitted to the control station. Claire, observing from shore, ordered the drone's robotic arm to clear the overlying mud. After more than 10 minutes, the underwater camera revealed the object, a small metal box covered in algae domed lid, partially corroded. The drone extracted it from the mud and secured it in the recovery net. Once on shore, the entire retrieval process was filmed. The object was placed on an isolation sheet and given a preliminary freshwater rinse. Beneath the thick mud layer, faint engraved markings, possibly manufacturer logos, appeared on the lid. When opened, it contained thick rotted fabric mixed with clay. A specialist used tweezers to remove the first item, a piece of off-white cloth with faint blue stripes and barely visible printed text, St. Thomas Medical Center. The team immediately noted this could be part of a hospital uniform, matching Elena's former workplace. Beneath the fabric was the second item, a round-faced metal wristwatch with silver band and cracked crystal. After gentle cleaning with preservation solution, the back revealed shallow engraving. EM technicians photographed it and assigned evidence code 04177SC1. Inside the same box were several small bone fragments, only a few centimeters long, some with joint head shapes, dark brown from long-term mineral absorption. They were collected with forceps into a separate preservation container under code 04177SC2. The entire metal box and contents were sealed on site, signed by Claire Holbrook and both technicians. The discovery location was marked with stakes for future surveys. After sample collection, the drone scanned an additional 200-meter radius but found no similar signals. By noon, all sonar data and underwater video were saved to hard drive and handed over for analysis. The same-day preliminary report read, "Metal object discovered in Stone Creek Lake mud, containing items potentially related to 2004 missing person hospital fabric, watch engraved EM, and human bone fragments." At 3:30 p.m., the evidence transport vehicle left for Nashville. Claire rode along holding the coordinate map and field log. In her end-of-day note, she wrote briefly, "Metal box. First physical evidence recovered after 18 years, same sector as vehicle." With this discovery, Stone Creek Lake for the first time provided concrete physical evidence linked to Elena Maddox's disappearance, ending nearly 2 decades of emptiness in file M04177. On the morning of April 11, 2022, after the evidence arrived at the Nashville Forensic Center, TBI initiated expanded forensic analysis of everything recovered from Stone Creek Lake. The metal box, fabric, watch and bone fragments were separated for individual examination while kept at 4 degrees Celsius. The small bone sample 04177AC2 was prioritized and sent to the State Forensic Anthropology Lab. Under microscope, 2 technicians confirmed human bone with porous structure and long-term mineral staining. They extracted DNA from remaining marrow using micro-extraction and multi-locus amplification. After 48 hours, the analyzer produced clear results. The sequence matched Eleanor White's reference sample at 99.999% certainty. The report stated, "Bone DNA confirms direct parent-child relationship. Biological origin is the daughter of the reference donor." This meant the bone fragments found in Stone Creek Lake belonged to Elena Maddox, the 2004 missing person. Concurrently, the forensic geology team compared mud adhered to the metal box with the 2004 garage floor sample. Spectral analysis showed identical ratios of limestone, fine clay, and characteristic silica particles, with variance under 0.5%, proving same geological source. The combined report concluded, mineral composition of mud on evidence matches garage sample exactly, could only occur through direct or indirect contact with that location. Criminalists also examined the EM engraved watch in detail. Despite corrosion, they recovered microscopic skin cells from the inner band. DNA matched the victim's profile, further tying the watch to Elena. The watch model was compared to St. Thomas Hospital personnel photos and confirmed as the same style Elena wore in a 2003 commemorative picture. The hospital fabric bearing the St. Thomas Medical Center logo was sent to the materials lab, which identified it as nursing uniform fabric used 2000-2005, matching Elena's employment period. One section showed irregular tearing with frayed folded edges, indicating forceful ripping rather than natural wear. When all data was compiled, Claire Holbrook submitted a 27-page interim report stating, physical evidence recovered from Stone Creek Lake bone fragments, personal watch, hospital fabric and mud, has been directly linked to victim Elena Maddox. DNA results confirm identity. Mud minerals match Royce Maddox garage, establishing physical connection between locations. At the April 15 task force meeting, Claire's report was presented to TBI leadership and the Sumner County Prosecutor's Office. Experts agreed the current evidence chain formed a tight linkage: victim presence at residence, identical hair and mud, backyard video showing suspicious activity, and lake biological evidence confirming final location. The chain was recognized as a complete physical chain from original scene to body disposal site. That same day, file M04177 was updated to status evidence chain established, confirmed biological and geological match. All items were resealed in a single container under combined code 04177SC and transferred to TBI forensic storage. In her investigation diary, Claire wrote the final entry of the day: complete linkage, garage, lake, victim. 18 years late, but the last pieces have finally clicked. With these results, the entire evidence chain in the Elena Maddox case was officially unified into forensically valid proof, establishing the victim's presence, movement, and fate. Marking a major turning point in file M04177 after nearly 2 decades of silence. Immediately after the chain of physical evidence was established, the cold case re-review task force investigation team shifted focus to locating the official vehicle Royce Maddox had used in 2004, a black Ford Crown Victoria assigned to Sumner County, but decommissioned and sold years earlier. The goal was to examine whether the vehicle had been used to transport an object related to the disappearance. On April 18, 2022, Inspector Claire Holbrook submitted a vehicle records request through the Sumner County Sheriff's Office Fleet Management System, determining that the car bearing administrative plate S2414 had been sold at auction in 2008 to a logistics company in Lebanon, Tennessee. From there, it passed through 2 private owners before finally being registered to a business that restores old police vehicles on the outskirts of Murfreesboro. On April 21, Claire and 2 forensics technicians arrived to inspect it at the company's storage yard. The owner confirmed they still had the vehicle in storage because restoration paperwork was incomplete. The Crown Victoria sat inside a warehouse, covered in dust, but the body was intact, and the original license plate was still affixed to the rear bumper. Claire immediately presented a warrant to search the evidence vehicle, which was granted on the spot. The car was fully photographed, sealed, and towed to the Nashville Forensics Center. Upon opening the doors, the interior had been partially stripped, but the trunk lock was original. The technicians applied ultraviolet light and immediately detected a faint fluorescent streak along the edge of the rubber trunk liner. A rapid presumptive test returned positive for hemoglobin, indicating the presence of dried blood. The trunk liner was carefully removed. A 10 by 15 centimeters section was cut for testing, and 3 additional samples of brownish dust lodged in the metal seams were collected. All were labeled 04177 Vic 1, Vic 2, and Vic 3. In the spare tire well, they also recovered a small gray fabric fiber that matched the color of the blanket previously seized from Maddox's garage. That fiber was separately bagged and sealed. The entire process was recorded on body camera. Royce Maddox, when questioned through his attorney, confirmed it was the vehicle he had once used, but stated he had turned it in to the county in 2006 and denied any knowledge of the condition inside the trunk. 2 days later, the blood analysis results came back. DNA extracted from sample Vic 1 matched Elena Maddox's DNA at 99.99%, using the same CODIS identifier previously confirmed. The forensic report concluded, human blood recovered from the trunk of Ford Crown Victoria Unit S2414 belongs to Elena Maddox. The trace is embedded deep in the rubber matting fibers, formed by direct contact, not spatter. Sample Vic 2 dust contained mineral composition consistent with Stone Creek Lake mud, while fiber Vic 3 exhibited polyester cotton characteristics identical to the blanket recovered from the garage. Taken together, the chain was clear: victim's blood, lake mud, garage materials, all converging in the same vehicle Royce Maddox drove at the time of the disappearance. Claire wrote in her report, "Evidence recovered from the Crown Vic completes the transportation link. Direct blood in the trunk proves physical contact between the victim and the vehicle under Royce Maddox's control." The report was submitted to TBI leadership on April 25 and validated under federal forensic standards. That same day, case file M04177 was updated to confirmed biological trace in official vehicle, case status, critical development. Remaining samples were sealed and transferred to central evidence storage under the VIR codes. As she signed the final receipt, Claire Holbrook wrote a short note in her duty log. 18 years, and the car finally spoke. With the DNA match plus the mud and fiber traces, the evidence chain in the Elena Maddox disappearance was now closed across crime scene, physical evidence, victim, and vehicle, moving the entire case into the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's critical investigation phase. Once the official vehicle blood results were confirmed and the evidence chain completed, TBI approved Inspector Claire Holbrook's proposal to create a digital reconstruction of the night of the disappearance in order to integrate all biological, visual, and timeline data into a single unified scenario. On April 27, 2022, the Criminal Analysis Unit, working with TBI Nashville's scene reconstruction team, began entering data from every source, 3D scans of the Maddox house, restored VHS video, GPS coordinates of the Stone Creek Lake area, mud sample data, and DNA extracts from the garage, official vehicle, and lake evidence. The model was built using specialized forensic software capable of simulating movement and real-time sequences based on field data. Over 4 days, the technicians recreated the Maddox house structure, backyard, garage, and the 9.6-mile route from Cedar Hill to Stone Creek. Every element was time-stamped according to reports: 22:30, couple returns from party; 3:05, restored video shows, figure carrying large object to garage; 3:15, video signal lost; 3:25, engine start sound matching neighbor statements; 4:10, estimated arrival at Stone Creek, based on distance and average speed. The simulation showed the movement path beginning at the back door, across the yard to the garage, where Elena's hair was found, then into the official Ford Crown Victoria, traveling southeast on Gallatin Pike, before turning onto the dirt road to the lake. The system calculated the entire trip lasted approximately 40 minutes. By overlaying DNA data, the program flagged physical crossover points between garage mud, lake mud, and trunk minerals, displayed as a continuous red line. That red line connected all 3 locations: the Maddox house, the Stone Creek Trail, and the exact coordinates where the metal drum containing bones was recovered, demonstrating continuous transport of an object bearing the victim's DNA that same night. When simulating behavior, the software recreated the 3 a.m. scene: dim porch light, a figure walking to the backyard, carrying a large object toward the garage, then turning off lights and driving away. The digital figure was generated using motion data of a person 1.85 m tall, matching Royce Maddox's height in personnel records. Upon completion, the aggregated results showed a 94.7% probability match between the physical evidence chain and the transport from house to lake scenario. While alternative theories, victim left voluntarily, or third-party involvement, scored below 10%. A 36-page technical report was produced detailing timeline sequence, travel distance, stops, and locations. The conclusion stated, based on DNA data, video footage, and scene parameters, it is highly probable the victim's body was moved from the residence to the Stone Creek Lake area between 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock on the morning of August 1, 2004, using Ford Crown Victoria S2414. Simulation images were exported as presentation videos for legal review. On May 3, Claire presented the results to the Cold Case Re-Review Task Force Oversight Board at TBI headquarters. Attending experts unanimously agreed the 3D model not only clearly recreated events, but also proved logical linkage between scene, evidence, and timeline. strengthening chain of evidence continuity. In the summary memo to the TBI director, the final comment read, "Simulation results support the sole hypothesis consistent with all physical evidence. The victim's body was transported from the Maddox residence to Stone Creek Lake on the night of the disappearance." When archiving the file, Claire wrote by hand on the last page, "Every piece of data meets on the same road." This 3D model became TBI's first visual tool for reconstructing the crime's journey after nearly 2 decades on ice. After the 3D model was completed and approved as supplemental technical evidence, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation directed the Behavioral Analysis Unit to conduct an updated psychological profile of Royce Maddox using 2004 data combined with new observations. On May 6, 2022, the FBI Nashville Behavioral Team, in coordination with TBI, reopened the old behavioral review file and performed the update. They gathered all records of Royce's law enforcement career, internal psychological evaluations, interviews with former colleagues, and recent personal data. Royce had retired in 2016 and was living in Gallatin with no prior criminal record. Neighbors described him as polite but reserved, keeps to himself. However, the 2004 FBI report had already noted high emotional control and a tendency to suppress emotional responses, factors that often lead to explosive outbursts when conflict arises. The current analysts cross-referenced new interviews and identified the same behavioral pattern persisting. Royce maintained a rigid daily schedule. Exercise, shopping, and bank account checks were nearly identical every day. One former partner recalled, "He got irritated when plans changed or people asked questions, and when angry he went silent but could act impulsively." The team classified this as absolute control personality. When personal order is disrupted, reactions can exceed rational limits. The behavioral report noted this pattern fit the disappearance night timeline. A minor argument escalates, followed by organized, cold, tightly timed actions. Analysts reviewed the restored video and commented, "Posture and gait of the figure match Royce Maddox movement is controlled, no panic, consistent with planned behavior." Voice analysis of the 911 call was also included. Voice map emotion recognition software registered an abnormally low stress index of 0.27 on a 1.0 scale, 78% below the average for individuals reporting a missing relative. This reaffirmed the 2004 assessment, extremely high control of outward expression, paired with risk of cold reaction after violence. At the May 10 review meeting, the behavioral team presented 4 key points. 1. Royce Maddox exhibits strong control traits in all life areas. 2. Prone to outbursts when situational control is lost. 3. Video behavior and physical evidence chain match the reactive domestic violence model. 4. Risk of reoffense if cornered. The 19-page final report concluded, high degree of alignment between behavioral profile and case facts. Recommend initiating legal proceedings. The report was forwarded the same day to the Cold Case Task Force Director and the Sumner County Prosecutor. After reviewing all documents, Inspector Claire Holbrook drafted the formal arrest warrant request. In her submission to the DA's office, she wrote, "Based on DNA results, physical evidence, scene reconstruction model, and updated behavioral profile, sufficient scientific and behavioral grounds exist to designate Royce Maddox as the primary suspect in the disappearance and homicide of Elena Maddox." The request included 37 appendices, DNA results, simulation images, scene diagrams, timeline tables, and detailed behavioral analysis. On May 12, 2022, the Sumner County Chief Prosecutor approved the file with the notation, "Sufficient grounds to proceed with arrest warrant application under Tennessee statute." Official notification was sent to TBI that day, marking the first time in 18 years the Elena Maddox case entered the legal phase. On the morning of May 14, 2022, immediately after the Sumner County Prosecutor approved the arrest package, TBI conducted the first formal interview with Royce Maddox at the Nashville Investigation Office. The session was voluntary, No arrest warrant yet, with the goal of giving Royce an opportunity to respond to new findings before legal action began. He arrived on time, wearing a light blue shirt, face tense, but maintaining his characteristic calm. Present were Inspector Claire Holbrook, lead investigator Mark Atwell, and a state prosecutor. The entire interview was audio and video recorded. After Royce affirmed his right to counsel and agreed to answer questions, Claire opened by summarizing the reinvestigation steps: hair DNA retesting, backyard video restoration, and evidence recovered from Stone Creek Lake. She placed in front of him a photo packet showing bone fragments, the watch-engraved EM, and the official vehicle trunk blood report. Royce examined each photo without visible reaction. When asked the last time he saw Elena, he repeated his original statement: "She left the house to drive and cool off. I never saw her again." Claire presented the new DNA results, emphasizing that garage hair matched Elena perfectly, trunk blood also matched the victim, and lake mud matched his garage. Royce was silent for over 10 seconds, then said quietly, "I don't know how to explain it. Maybe she came home while I was asleep." Investigator Atwell countered that was impossible because restored video showed someone carrying a large object to the garage at 3 a.m. The exact time neighbors heard an engine start, and the figure's build matched him. Royce shook his head slightly, voice even, "It wasn't me, you have the wrong person." Claire showed enlarged video stills comparing posture and height to his personnel file measurements, demonstrating 95% similarity. He remained silent. When asked about the EM watch, Royce said, "I've never seen that, maybe a gift from work." Regarding the official vehicle, he insisted he didn't know why blood was in the trunk. "I turned the car in, someone else could have used it afterward." The prosecutor reminded him the blood was embedded beneath the rubber liner, only possible from direct contact before any cleaning, and the mud matched his garage. Royce looked down at the table, hands clasped, no response. Nearly 2 hours passed with questions circling timeline contradictions, movement sequence, and evidence. Whenever pressed for detail, Royce repeated, "I don't remember, I don't know, or someone else could have done it." His demeanor was so calm that the room's heart rate monitor showed steady readings, unlike typical reactions when confronted with direct evidence. Claire ended the interview at 11:45 a.m., noting in the record, "Subject cooperative in form only, no admissions, no strong reaction to evidence, maintained controlled demeanor, evaded direct questions." The full recording was sealed as supplemental material for file M0-4177. That afternoon at the Sumner County Prosecutor's Office, the formal arrest warrant was drafted. The chief prosecutor signed the charging document for second-degree murder based on physical evidence, DNA results, simulation model, and behavioral analysis. The warrant was delivered to the Tennessee State Judge at 1720 and approved that evening. Copies, bearing case number 22-045, were issued to TBI and coordinating agencies, stating, "Royce Maddox, primary suspect in the disappearance and homicide of Elena Maddox, authorized for arrest any time within 48 hours of issuance." At the bottom, Claire Holbrook's confirmation signature was printed in bold, marking the end of the interview phase, and the decisive turn in file M0-4177 18 years after Elena vanished. On the morning of August 14, 2022, after 3 months finalizing the file and cross-checking the entire evidence chain, the arrest warrant for Royce Maddox was formally signed by a Tennessee state judge in Nashville under number 22-045A, effective immediately statewide. At 6:30, a Tennessee Bureau of Investigation tactical team, supported by Sumner County deputies, proceeded to the residential area on the outskirts of Gallatin, where Royce resided. He lived in a small single-story gray house, set back about 4 miles from downtown among old oak trees, isolated from the main road. Per plan, the arrest team split into 2 groups. One approached the front door, the second covered the rear to prevent escape through the yard. Royce had been under surveillance for weeks and was not considered high risk for resistance, but because he was a retired armed officer, all approach protocols remained high safety. At 7:12, the team leader signaled execution. 3 knocks sounded, and Claire Holbrook announced, "Royce Maddox, this is the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. We have a warrant for your arrest." After a few seconds of silence, the door opened. Royce appeared in workout clothes, holding a coffee cup. He showed no surprise, only asked, "I guess you found something else?" Claire stepped forward and read the full warrant aloud. When she reached the charge, second-degree murder in connection with the 2004 disappearance of Elena Maddox, he nodded slightly, set the coffee cup on the porch table, and extended both wrists. Cuffs number 6 clicked shut with a brief metallic sound. The arrest occurred without a word of resistance. The entire takedown was filmed and documented on site. While officers executed the accompanying search warrant inside the house, Claire and 2 forensic technicians entered Royce's office. The small, tidy room contained an old wooden desk holding a computer, a few file folders, and a brown leather notebook centered on top. When opened, the first page read, "The 31st of July, 2004, unfinished," followed by scattered notes. 3:05, back porch light, 3:10, door sound. Stay quiet, clean up. Subsequent pages listed items, locations, and times written in blue ink, stopping mid-page as if abandoned. Claire immediately seized the notebook, sealing it on site as 04177JN1. In a drawer, technicians also located a small metal box containing old photos of Elena and a copy of their marriage certificate, but no additional items of evidentiary value. After the search concluded, Royce was escorted from the house, head slightly bowed, morning sunlight filtering through the trees onto his expressionless face. Neighbors watched from a distance, many unable to believe the quiet man, who had once been an exemplary officer, was now being led away in handcuffs. The TBI convoy departed Gallatin at 8:05 and drove directly to Nashville headquarters. There, Royce was processed, fingerprinted, photographed, and moved to investigative detention. At 9:40, the complete arrest report was signed by Claire Holbrook and lead investigator Mark Atwell, attaching an inventory of seized items, personal notebook JN1, desktop hard drive JN2, and 12 paper photos in the metal box, JN3. The day's report stated, "Subject taken into custody without incident or resistance, cooperative within limits." Seized items include personal notebook containing entries describing events matching the disappearance timeline. By late morning, the Sumner County prosecutor received official notice, Royce Maddox, primary suspect in the Elena Maddox case, arrested at residence in Gallatin, Tennessee, pursuant to state court warrant at 7:12 a.m. At that moment, file M04177 was updated to suspect in custody, marking the first time in 18 years the case had a person in custody directly tied to the established evidence chain. After Royce Maddox was arrested, and the new physical evidence was sealed, the TBI compiled all investigative data to produce the final comprehensive forensic report. The process took more than 3 months and involved 5 specialized divisions: forensic biology, geology, image analysis, crime scene reconstruction, and criminal behavior. On November 22, 2022, the complete report was released, 186 pages long, assigned case number F22/TBI-M04177. The report followed the standard Tennessee Bureau of Investigation structure and was divided into 8 main sections, each corresponding to a category of evidence. The first section presented the chain of biological evidence, confirming that DNA from hair, blood, and bone all matched the victim Elena Maddox, and that their locations in the garage, the duty vehicle, and Stone Creek Lake formed a continuous movement trajectory. The second section compiled geological results, proving that mud samples from all 3 locations had nearly identical mineral compositions. thereby confirming that the container holding the remains had direct contact with the Maddox garage floor before being submerged in the lake. The third section focused on image analysis and 3D modeling, detailing the movement timeline on the night of July 31, 2004, and accurately reconstructing the time window from 3:05 a.m. to 4:10 a.m., when the victim was believed to have died and been transported in the duty vehicle. The fourth section synthesized behavioral data, confirming Royce Maddox's controlling personality and his unusually calm reaction after the incident, consistent with the reactive domestic violence profile. The fifth section analyzed additional physical evidence, including the watch-engraved EM hospital fabric fragments and the metal barrel recovered from the lake. Results confirmed these items were directly linked to the victim and bore her DNA on their surfaces. The sixth section cited interrogation results, noting that Royce denied any involvement but failed to provide any credible alibi. The seventh section detailed the chain of custody, transportation and testing of evidence, ensuring an unbroken preservation record over the entire 18-year period. Finally, the eighth section contained the investigative conclusion, presented concisely yet with high legal weight. Based on the combined results of biological, geological, behavioral, and imaging examinations, it is concluded that victim Elena Maddox died as a result of violent acts inside her own home, at an estimated time of approximately 3:10 a.m. on August 1, 2004. The subsequent movement of the body, concealment of evidence, and disposal of remains demonstrate premeditation after the fact. The offense most closely matches, under Tennessee law, second-degree murder combined with concealment and disposal of evidence. The report also emphasized that no evidence of accomplices or third-party involvement was found, indicating the crime was personal in nature. All 186 pages were printed on legal paper and included 74 color photographs, 12 diagrams, and 6 simulation charts. Every page bore the seal of the TBI Forensic Services Division and the signatures of the 5 lead examiners. On November 25, the file was officially transferred to the Sumner County District Attorney's Office via secure channel, accompanied by a formal request to indict under Tennessee Code Annotated Section 3913-210. The transfer memorandum stated clearly, File M04177 is complete. Conclusion: intentional deprivation of life with staging of the scene and concealment of the body. The district attorney is requested to proceed with state-level criminal prosecution. On the morning of November 26, the Sumner County District Attorney signed for receipt of the file, confirming its entry into the prosecution system under new case number SC 22417. This comprehensive forensic report is regarded as the most thorough investigative document ever produced for a cold case in Tennessee, and with its submission, the Elena Maddox case officially entered the criminal prosecution phase. After the comprehensive forensic file was transferred to the Sumner County District Attorney's Office, preparations for the trial of Royce Maddox began in early December 2022. The district attorney formed a special prosecution team of 3 members who worked directly with the TBI to develop the courtroom evidence presentation strategy. The first step was to review the potential witness list that could corroborate the timeline. Forensic technicians who conducted the testing, the sonar team that located evidence in Stone Creek Lake, and 2 neighbors who heard a vehicle start in the early morning hours of August 1, 2004. The list also included the victim's mother, Mrs. Eleanor White, who provided the reference DNA sample, and lead investigator Claire Holbrook, who oversaw the entire re-investigation phase. Meanwhile, the Criminalistics Unit re-examined the backyard video to verify the tape's authenticity. TBI digital imaging specialists concluded, no signs of editing, no inserted frames, no manipulation. The signal is continuous from start to data loss and matches the engine noise timestamp recorded by identical security cameras. The 24-page authentication report confirmed full legal admissibility of the VHS recovered video. At the same time, the Sumner County Court Clerk completed jury summons procedures. From 146 eligible citizens, 12 jurors and 3 alternates were selected after 3 rounds of voir dire. The selection process lasted 7 days and ensured no one had personal or professional ties to law enforcement to avoid conflicts of interest. On January 9, 2023, the court scheduled the official trial for February. The prosecution prepared a catalog of more than 100 exhibits, including DNA samples, 3D simulation maps, the video, and the 186-page forensic report. Meanwhile, Royce's defense team, led by attorney Danvers and Associates, began filing numerous motions to limit the scope of evidence. They asked the court to exclude the restored video, arguing that digitally processed data enhanced by artificial intelligence cannot guarantee originality, and questioned the validity of the VHS to digital conversion process. They also sought to exclude certain witness statements, citing memory degradation due to the passage of time. On January 18, a pretrial hearing was held at the Sumner County Courthouse, attended by prosecutors, defense counsel, and presiding Judge Martin Keller. The prosecution countered that digitizing the tape and using AI to recover frames only restored the signal without altering content, and the entire process was conducted under legal supervision. They presented a report from an independent expert at the Tennessee Digital Forensics Institute, confirming no data had been added or removed. After 3 hours of argument, Judge Keller issued an 11-page written ruling. The backyard video was lawfully recovered. Digitization and brightness enhancement are technical measures only and do not alter the substance of the evidence. The motion to exclude is denied. This ruling was seen as a turning point in the pretrial phase because the video was the critical link connecting the physical evidence chain to the suspect's actions on the night of the disappearance. Following the court's decision, the prosecution finalized its chronological evidence presentation plan, starting with the 911 call, moving through the scene, physical items, DNA, 3D modeling, and ending with the video. They also prepared a list of 18 anticipated witnesses divided into 3 groups: forensic, civilian, and investigative. Royce Maddox remained in custody at the Sumner County Detention Center during this period, permitted twice-weekly attorney visits. The defense continued gathering material for rebuttal, focusing on the arguments of no direct eyewitness and lack of evidence regarding exact time of death. On January 25, the prosecution formally submitted its trial readiness report to Judge Keller. In its conclusion, the report stressed, "The chain of physical DNA and imaging evidence forms a complete legal structure that establishes intentional conduct and rules out accident or third-party involvement." Judge Keller signed acknowledgement that same day, officially placing State of Tennessee v. Royce Maddox on the February 2023 trial calendar, marking the end of preparations and confirming that all evidence, including the backyard video, would be admissible before the jury. The trial in State of Tennessee v. Royce Maddox officially opened at the Sumner County Courthouse in Gallatin, Tennessee, on the morning of February 6, 2020. The courtroom was packed with local media, investigators, and residents who had once known Royce when he was deputy sheriff. The jury of 12 members and 3 alternates sat along the right side. Judge Martin Keller presided. When asked for his plea during initial formalities, Royce stood and answered briefly, "Not guilty." His voice was calm, his gaze fixed straight ahead, unwavering. Sumner County District Attorney Linda Carver opened with a summary of the nearly 2-decade-old case, emphasizing the persistence of investigators and modern forensic techniques that brought the case back to light. She introduced the chain of evidence, DNA results, geological data, items recovered from the lake, and the restored backyard video. After formalities, the prosecution called its first witness, lead investigator Claire Holbrook, who had overseen the entire reinvestigation. From the stand, she described in detail the file review, discovery of hair samples, resubmission for testing, VHS tape recovery, and the search that located evidence in Stone Creek Lake. Each statement was accompanied by illustrative images projected on the large courtroom screen. When she presented the backyard video, the lights dimmed, leaving only the blue glow of the screen. The tape played in slow motion, showing a tall figure carrying a long object from the back door to the garage at 3 a.m. The jury watched intently. The room was so quiet only the projector's hum could be heard. Claire pointed to the screen and said, "This timestamp aligns perfectly with the engine noise heard by witnesses." When the lights came back on, the prosecution displayed height and gait comparisons that matched Royce Maddox at 95%. Next, forensic biologists presented DNA reports, hair from the garage, blood from the trunk, and bone from the lake, all matched victim Elena Maddox. They projected gene sequence analysis tables on screen, columns of numbers and identifiers demonstrating perfect matches across samples. A geologist followed, describing mud composition from the garage, vehicle, and lake. 3 nearly identical graphs proved physical connection. When the prosecution combined the data, the screen displayed a 3D reconstruction of the night of July 31, 2004. Images of the house, backyard, garage, and route to Stone Creek Lake appeared, recreating the movement sequence of the Ford Crown Victoria, Unit S 2414. The 40-minute simulation showed a red line connecting the 3 locations, garage, roadway, lake, perfectly aligning with the DNA and mineral evidence. The courtroom fell silent as the model reached its final point, the coordinates where the metal barrel was found. When the lights returned, the prosecution concluded its opening presentation. All scientific data points in one direction, and only one person could have driven that vehicle, the man sitting here. The defense, led by attorney Danvers, rose to cross-examine. He argued the prosecution had no direct eyewitness, no proven time of death, and that the technical evidence amounted to complex computer-generated hypotheses. He stressed the absence of an intact body made cause-of-death conclusions unreliable. When permitted to speak, Royce said briefly, "I never harmed Elena. Everything you've seen is just speculation." Throughout questioning, he remained calm and did not look toward the prosecution or jury. Miss Carver requested the video be replayed and asked, "Can you tell the court who the person in this footage is?" Royce remained silent, hands folded on the table. When the judge instructed him to answer, he replied only, "I don't know." The response caused murmurs throughout the gallery. The prosecution did not press further and simply entered the full 186-page forensic report into evidence, along with 47 color photos and 12 simulation diagrams. By the 4th day of trial, all witnesses from DNA specialists and the sonar team to imaging technicians had completed testimony, each confirming the evidence chain was consistent and lawfully collected. Royce maintained his denials. When the session adjourned, Judge Keller announced, "Trial will resume tomorrow morning for closing arguments." The day's minutes contained a brief entry. Prosecution presented full physical, biological, and simulation evidence. Defendant maintains denial. With that, the case moved into the decisive phase of trial, with all evidence now publicly presented to the jury nearly 20 years after Elena Maddox vanished. On the morning of February 10th, and Joanie 3, the trial entered closing arguments. Both sides were permitted to deliver final summations to the jury to shape their evaluation of the evidence before deliberation. The courtroom was packed. Tension filled the air. District Attorney Linda Carver began firmly and decisively. 18 years of investigation, thousands of hours by investigators, and hundreds of forensic exhibits all led to one undeniable truth. Elena Maddox died inside her own home, and the person responsible is her husband, Royce Maddox. She pointed toward the defense table, then turned to the large screen displaying images, hair samples, garage mud, trunk blood, the metal barrel from Stone Creek Lake, and the watch engraved EM. Each photo appeared as its exhibit number was read. "These physical fragments don't lie," she continued. "But when pieced together, they tell one story of an argument one night, an impulsive act, and an almost 20-year effort to conceal it." The jury sat in complete silence. The prosecution replayed the backyard video, freezing at frame 5129 as the tall figure carried the long object through the light. "This is not a stranger," Miss Carver stressed. This is a man who once swore to uphold justice. She compared height, gait, and vehicle start timing with neighbor testimony. Everything matched perfectly. Next, she displayed the DNA results table on the wall. Rows of identifiers glowed clearly. Hair from the garage, blood from the duty car, bone from the lake, one person. Elena Maddox's DNA, zero error. She ended her closing with no coincidence could produce this chain of matches. There is only one truth: he killed his wife. When the prosecution sat, Attorney Danvers approached the lectern, adjusted his tie, and began slowly, looking directly at the jury. 18 years is long enough to fade the truth, and we are judging a man based on data that is no longer in its original form. The video you just watched was restored by computer software. Those digital frames are not eyewitness evidence. DNA, yes, it matches, but remember, it only proves presence, not criminal action. No one saw Royce Maddox harm Elena. No one. He walked slowly past the prosecution table, voice growing sharper. You may rely on graphs and 3D models, but they cannot replace truth. We have no cause of death, no exact time of death, and no confession. A criminal case requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If you have even a small doubt, just one, the law compels you to return a verdict of not guilty. He paused, bowed his head, then said softly, Royce Maddox is a human being, not a simulation. The prosecution offered a brief rebuttal, emphasizing that DNA, physical items and video, are not assumptions. They are immutable physical facts. Judge Keller allowed final concluding statements. Miss Carver stood and addressed the jury. We seek justice not only for Elena, but for a truth hidden for 18 years. Look at the evidence, not the rhetoric. Science has spoken the rest. When closing arguments ended, Judge Keller delivered jury instructions, directing them to evaluate all evidence, particularly three key factors: authenticity of the video, the three-point DNA chain, and the continuous physical evidence from garage to Stone Creek Lake. He emphasized, if you find this evidence forms a single logical chain with no reasonable doubt, you must return a guilty verdict. If any alternative explanation remains possible, you must acquit. After closing arguments concluded, Judge Martin Keller ordered the jury to retire to Deliberation Room 2 on the second floor of the Sumner County Courthouse. The 12 jurors and 3 alternates were instructed to review the entire record, including the restored video, DNA results, physical items, and the 186-page forensic report. They received the judge's written legal instructions, highlighting 3 factors for evaluation. First, whether victim Elena Maddox died due to intentional acts by the defendant. Second, whether DNA and physical evidence prove the defendant's presence and participation at the scene. Third, whether any reasonable doubt existed sufficient to preclude criminal liability. The deliberation room door was sealed. Only the sound of turning pages and pens marking the summary could be heard. On the table lay printed stills from the video, 3D diagrams, and the evidence list. Discussion was serious and lasted nearly 5 hours. Several jurors initially hesitated due to the absence of a direct eyewitness, but as they re-examined the matching DNA and mud traces across garage, vehicle, and lake, consensus gradually formed. One juror remarked, if it were DNA from only one location, doubt would be possible. But here we have 3 points, all tied to movement. Another referenced the backyard video. We can't see the face, but height and timing are perfect. No one else could have been there. When they reviewed the 3D route simulation showing the seamless drive between the Maddox home and Stone Creek Lake, many nodded in agreement. After a short dinner break, the 4-person called the first vote. Result: 10 guilty, 2 undecided. They re-watched the video and reviewed the FBI behavioral analysis, particularly Royce Maddox's controlling personality and cold reaction. At 8:25 p.m., after nearly 8 hours, a second vote was taken. Result: unanimous 12/12ths. Guilty of murder in the second degree under Tennessee Code Section 3913-210. When the court clerk received the signal, Judge Keller returned to the bench. The lights came on. The gallery fell silent. The jury filed back in. The foreperson handed the sealed envelope to the clerk. Judge Keller opened it and read slowly. In the charge of second-degree murder in State of Tennessee v. Royce Maddox, we the jury unanimously find the defendant guilty. The final words echoed. The room remained completely still. Royce sat upright, expression unchanged. Claire Holbrook lowered her head to her notebook, hands clasped tightly. Eleanor White raised a hand to her mouth, eyes filled with tears. Judge Keller called for order and pronounced sentence, pursuant to Tennessee sentencing guidelines. Defendant Royce Maddox is sentenced to 25 years imprisonment, with no parole eligibility for the first 18 years to be served in a Tennessee State Correctional Facility. The sentence is effective from August 14, 2022, the date of arrest. After sentencing, Royce was asked to stand and acknowledge his appeal rights. He replied only, "I understand." His face remained blank, eyes staring forward. As officers led him from the courtroom, camera flashes erupted. Judge Keller entered the final note in the record. Trial concluded. Verdict unanimous. Offense, second-degree murder. In the hallway outside, the atmosphere was heavy but quiet. A local reporter noted, after 18 years, Gallatin finally heard the word the entire town had been waiting for: guilty. The court clerk's final entry that day read, sentence 25 years imprisonment, no early release. Trial concluded at 20:57 on February 10, 2023. 2 weeks after the verdict was announced, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation held an official press conference at its Nashville headquarters to release the comprehensive final report on the Elena Maddox case, file number M04177. The event took place on February 24, 2023, and was attended by the Sumner County Prosecutor's Office, heads of forensic technical divisions, and numerous reporters from local and national media outlets. TBI Director David Langford opened with the statement, "This case stands as proof of the power of modern forensic science and of our unwavering commitment to never forget a victim." From the podium, he presented the 96-page report, which summarized the entire 18-year investigation from the disappearance on August 1, 2004, to the conviction in February 2023. The report detailed how TBI combined next-generation DNA technology, artificial intelligence image restoration, and underwater sonar systems to painstakingly reconstruct the truth. The first section highlighted the breakthrough role of whole genome sequencing technology deployed in 22, which allowed re-examination of the hair sample recovered from the Maddox garage in 2004. Thanks to this technology, a complete DNA profile was recovered and matched perfectly with the victim's mother's reference sample, conclusively proving Elena's presence at the scene. The second section emphasized the importance of the AI-based digital image restoration system used to recover and enhance the old VHS tape that captured the moment a man carried a large object into the garage on the night of the disappearance. The report stated, "The successful recovery of data from analog media after 18 years produced decisive visual evidence that reopened the entire case." At the same time, TBI presented the evaluation of the side-scan sonar technology used at Stone Creek Lake, where investigators located the metal barrel containing the victim's watch, hospital gown fragments, and bone fragments. The sonar images reprinted in the report demonstrated the equipment's high accuracy in detecting the metal object buried nearly 10 feet deep in mud. Director Langford called it one of the first applications of hydroacoustic technology in a cold case investigation in the state. The report also devoted a separate section to the 3D crime scene reconstruction process, describing how DNA data, imagery, and timelines were synthesized into a full scene simulation model that precisely traced the suspect movement from the house to the lake. According to the expert team, the integration of these technologies created the most complete technical chain of evidence in TBI investigative history. Claire Holbrook, the lead investigator for the reinvestigation phase, was invited to speak last. She briefly outlined the step-by-step recovery of every case detail and stressed the importance of proper original evidence preservation. Every piece of evidence in this case, from the hair, the mud samples, to the VHS tape, was stored according to protocol. That careful handling is what allowed us to bring justice back after nearly 2 decades. The report also listed 14 procedural recommendations for future cold cases, including full digitization of all files predating 2010, expanded cooperation with federal laboratories, and implementation of specialized long-term evidence preservation training programs. As the press conference ended, Director Langford concluded, "No technology can ever replace people, but technology can bring people closer to the truth than ever before." The final report was published on the TBI's official website the same day, officially marking the end of the investigative phase of the Elena Maddox case, a case now regarded as a milestone for modern forensics in the state of Tennessee. Following the TBI's release of the final report, the Cold Case Re-Review Task Force proceeded with the last phase of its 2023 plan, a comprehensive review of the 2004 investigation process to draw lessons and establish new standards for handling long-dormant cases statewide. In March 2023, a special 12-member committee of forensic experts, veteran investigators, and technical advisors was formed and met regularly in Nashville for 6 weeks. The report opened by stating, "The Maddox case has proven that delays in adopting new technology, storage procedures, and interagency coordination are the primary reasons many cold cases remain stalled." The panel examined every step of the original 2004 Sumner County investigation, from evidence collection, classification, and storage to crime scene documentation and data handling. They identified 3 major weaknesses. First, inconsistent evidence classification. Many items were stored using outdated mechanical methods and lacked uniform identifiers, making later retrieval difficult. Second, forensic technology at the time was limited, yet there was no requirement for periodic retesting when new methods became available, leaving biological evidence asleep for nearly 2 decades. Third, coordination between county and state levels was fragmented, meaning the Maddox file was only revisited after the task force was created. The evaluation report stated clearly, had a periodic review mechanism or statewide cold case program existed in 2004, the Maddox case could have been reinvestigated at least 10 years earlier. Based on these findings, the task force proposed a new set of standards titled Tennessee Cold Case Standards 2023. Consisting of 5 core principles. 1. All biological evidence in unsolved missing person or homicide cases must be reinventoried and retested at least every 10 years or immediately upon availability of new analytical technology. Every case file must receive uniform coding in the TBI Central Evidence Vault digital system, including physical location and seal status. 3. All images, audio, and reports must be backed up in at least 2 formats to prevent loss. 4. Establish cross-monitoring between county and state levels to ensure files are not forgotten during personnel changes. 5. Require regular training for evidence custodians, especially in recognizing and preserving long-term DNA samples. In addition, the task force recommended that TBI partner with in-state universities to create an open forensic data center to collect, standardize, and share cold case information in an academic model for research and AI applications in investigations. The 62-page report was released on April 18, 2023, and sent to every county sheriff's office and criminal investigation division in the state. In its conclusion, the committee wrote, "The Maddox case is a reminder that a single procedural lapse can delay justice by decades. The new standards aim not only to improve technique, but to ensure no case, no matter how old, is ever forgotten." Following the final meeting, the TBI director signed the order making the Tennessee Cold Case Standards 2023 the official statewide guideline effective May 2023. The announcement was issued the same day, fully replacing the 2004 procedures with the new framework, one built directly from the shortcomings exposed by the Elena Maddox case. In May 2023, immediately after the Tennessee Cold Case Standards 2023 were officially enacted, TBI completed the final administrative step in the Elena Maddox case, closing investigation file M04177. The closure order was signed on May 12 by Director David Langford, with confirmation from the Sumner County Prosecutor and the State Forensic Division. The document stated, "All investigative, prosecutorial and trial procedures related to the Maddox case have been completed. No further operational activities or legal extensions remain. The file is now classified closed, adjudicated case." That same morning, Cold Case Division archivists in Nashville began reviewing, backing up and cataloging the entire case file. 3 physical sets and 1 encrypted digital copy were created to ensure integrity. The first set contained all 2004 field reports, original photographs, technical reports, statements, and administrative decisions, bound in 5 hardcover volumes and sealed with the label, "Historical Evidence, Do Not Destroy." The second set included all 2022-2023 reinvestigation material, DNA results, restored video, 3D maps, simulation models, and the complete 186-page forensic report. The third set consisted of legal records, interrogation transcripts, trial records, the verdict and the closure order. Each volume received its own code, was sealed, and placed in a climate-controlled vault on the 3rd floor of TBI Nashville headquarters. Simultaneously, the encrypted electronic copy was uploaded to the Evidence Cloud server with multi-layer authentication. The data was flagged non-editable, accessible only by director-level clearance or court order. The internal archiving report noted, total 2,184 pages of documents, 143 digitized exhibits, 86 physical items, and 27 videos preserved in full. Exhibit condition: stable, stored at 4 degrees Celsius. No structural degradation observed. That afternoon, Inspector Claire Holbrook and the 3 investigators who directly handled the case signed the final handover document. She placed her signature next to the pre-printed line, "Case M04177 closed, transferred to Permanent Archive, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, May 2023. Once everything was finished, the storage staff sealed shelf T12, the location that had held the 2 original evidence boxes for nearly 2 decades, and applied the new label "Closed File, Historical Cold Case Archive." On the central computer monitor, code M04177 changed from red active to gray closed. A copy of the file was also sent to the State Criminal Archives for use in training. The final archiving summary stated, "The Maddox file is one of Tennessee's first cold cases resolved entirely through whole genome DNA, digital image restoration, and 3D scene reconstruction. It has been classified as an exemplar case for training and forensic reference." When the process was complete, the storage unit lights were turned off and the vault door locked. Among hundreds of shelves of files, the documents coded M04177 now rest quietly inside a polished metal box, marking the full conclusion of a disappearance and investigation that lasted nearly 20 years. At the bottom of the final record, a single bold, concise line reads, "Status closed. Case solved and archived at TBI Nashville." On May 22, 2023, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation released an internal final summary report marking the complete closure of the Elena Maddox investigation, file M04177. The 42-page document, signed by Director David Langford, was sent to the State Attorney General's office, the Sumner County Prosecutor, and the Tennessee Department of Justice. The introduction stated, "File M04177, opened August 1, 2004, regarding the disappearance of citizen Elena Maddox, is confirmed fully resolved as of February 2023, after 18 years of investigation, re-examination, and successful prosecution." The report summarized the entire timeline, from the initial investigation and failure to locate a body, to the case being reopened in 22 under the Cold Case Re-Review Task Force. Sections listed every key development in detail: the matching DNA, the restored VHS tape, the evidence recovered from Stone Creek Lake, and the forensic conclusions that established a complete physical chain of evidence. Section 3 emphasized the role of modern technology, calling it the decisive factor in breaking an 18-year deadlock. The administrative conclusion confirmed the case classification solved, adjudicated, ending all operational activity and moving the file to historical storage. In the performance review section, TBI acknowledged the close collaboration among the biology, digital imaging, behavioral, and underwater sonar units. The report also named 12 personnel for commendation, including lead investigator Claire Holbrook. An appendix noted that the Maddox case has become the model for cold case reinvestigation procedures and was added to official training materials starting in 2024. On the final page, the bold closing line read, "After 18 years, justice has been served. File M0-4177 is officially closed. No further investigative activity remains." This report confirms the complete termination of all operational procedures. At 4:20 p.m. that day, the central database updated the status to closed solved across the entire TBI network. That entry marked the very last milestone of a case that shook Tennessee for nearly 2 decades and brought to an end what is regarded as the longest investigation in the agency's history. The story of the Elena Maddox case is not merely a cold record of forensic data. It is a powerful reminder of the value of perseverance, justice, and faith in the truth, values that remain profoundly meaningful in American society today. A case that stretched 18 years, beginning with what seemed a hopeless disappearance in 2004 and finally solved in 2022, demonstrates the power of science and of people who refuse to give up. Every detail, from the forgotten hair in the garage, the VHS tape restored by artificial intelligence, to the discovery of bone fragments and an EM watch beneath Stone Creek Lake, reflects one truth. The truth never truly vanishes. It only waits for someone patient enough to find it again. In a country whose justice system rests on evidence and trust in due process, this story underscores the importance of preserving data, maintaining transparency, and continually updating technology so that justice is never limited by time. It also reminds us of the human side. Victim Elena was not just a name in a file, but a representative of the thousands forgotten in cold cases across America. TBI's success was not only a triumph of science, it is proof that a society is only as strong as its refusal to let anyone disappear in silence. The lesson for all of us is simple: never underestimate the power of persistence and progress. In a nation that is constantly changing, continually improving, upholding principles, and respecting truth is the only way to ensure justice always has a voice, even if it takes 18 years to be heard. If you believe justice never truly dies, only needs time and people who never stop searching, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue this journey together, exploring cases once thought lost forever. Thank you for following the story of the Elena Maddox case. See you in the next video, where we'll step into another file where the truth is still waiting to be found.